Hello, and thank you for listening to episode 7 of Begonia Banter. My name is Kristen from @BegoniaSarawak on Instagram, and thank you for listening to this episode. I want to talk about my current series that I'm doing, which is making my vertical terrarium, which I guess I'll just dive straight into this. I don't actually think I'm using the terminology correctly because I think a terrarium is just with plants and there's not a water feature. And since I have a water feature, I think it's called something else. I think it's called a terrarium. Actually, let me just do a quick Google search. I should have come prepared. I'm sorry. I literally don't even know how to spell this. I'm going to be sneaky. I'm going to put difference between terrarium and then it'll auto, and I knew it was going to do that. It auto populated a polydarium. I think that's actually what I created because it has a water element, but these are just labels. Who really cares? You guys can all see what I'm currently making. I started the project back in July for this new final results, but I've had the case for well over a year now. And I just wanted to talk briefly about it because this is the first time that I ever made anything that's permanent like this. Usually I would just put plants in a pot in a little glass container, and that would be, my quote unquote terrarium. I did nothing in terms of background structure and details and design and actually creating a jungle-like atmosphere. So that was really cool to me. And when I first got into terrarium plants, I liked following all of the accounts. Usually they're based in like Asia, Japan, Malaysia, Indonesia, places like that. I was getting recommended those creators like crazy in the beginning because before I even got into Begonia, I was getting targeted with those kinds of posts because obviously I was engaging with those kind of posts. And I always loved these big, beautiful cases that have fish and plants and, obviously a water feature if there's fish there. And I always thought, oh, wow, I'd love to have one of those, but all of the ones I saw were absolutely massive and I don't have the space for that. And I think it would be one of those things where I think it looks really cool, and I'm sure if I had one, I would absolutely adore it. But I think the maintenance of something that large is a commitment for sure. And I don't know if I'm ready for something like that because I do travel quite frequently and I'm away from home a lot. Well, not a lot, but, frequently. And I don't think something like that would be conducive to my lifestyle, and I wouldn't want fish or plants to suffer because I'm not there. So although those big structures are beautiful and definitely a centerpiece, I never really had the urge to make one myself just because of like the commitment of it. And then for those of you who don't know, I did kind of want to get into making something like that, but without a water feature. So just like a pure terrarium. And at the time, everything I was Googling and finding on Amazon was not labeled, or sorry, everything that was labeled as like a terrarium case, suitable for reptiles, etc., like all the keywords were so expensive, even for something really small, which is what I was looking for. Like kind of dip my toe in. And again, at the time, I was not looking for a water feature. I just wanted to have something a bit more than what I was doing. And then I started to get creative and I found the case, which I used in this series, which is actually a acrylic baseball case. and I unscrewed the brackets that hold the bat inside the case, and it gave me a completely clean slate to work with, complete with a magnetic lid, lid that goes with the case. So I was thinking, oh, that would be perfect for maintenance and just easy access to the plants if I need to, do pruning or watering or something like that. And I have everything that I used in my Amazon storefront for those of you who are curious and just, want to peruse around, get some ideas. The case is on there too. And last time I checked, I did just check recently, the case did not go up in price. So it's still, I think it's $49.99 or $48.99, which is good. Because anything close to that size with the label as terrarium would be at least like $200. At least that's where I am in America. And so the first design I did was not good. And it's funny because I'm laughing because I had shown, or I had talked about what I wanted to do with a few people, and I told them how I wanted to use like a cocoa coir mat, because at the time I wanted everything to be removable because I change my mind a lot and I like to tweak things, and I didn't like the idea of having anything to a point where like I couldn't change it. So like as you see in the series, I used spray foam, which is permanent. Like you can't, like once you put it in there, and do your design, like you can't alter the foam really. But at the time, that was very intimidating to me, and I was not committed to that. So I wanted to use a cocoa coir mat because I thought in my head the plants could grow up it, and eventually you wouldn't see the cocoa coir mat at all because it would just be filled with moss and plants and like pumice stones and sticks and stuff like that. And it's funny because the two people that I told my idea to, they both said like, that's not gonna work, like I'm trying to help you. That's not gonna work. But I just, when you get something in your head and you probably know it's not going to work, but you're like, but what if, like, that 0.5% chance that it works. And also cocoa coir was like extremely cheap. So, I was on a budget. And yeah, so even though the experts, because both of these people have experience in creating these types of things and way more experience with terrarium plants than I do, and logically I should have listened to them, but I just had it in my head and I'm like, even if this doesn't work, like I just have to try it. It was one of those things where it's like I just have to do it. I had to get it out of my system. And I don't even know why I don't even like cocoa coir. It was just like, I don't know. It was just one of those things, like it was in my head and I had to do it. And so I did the cocoa coir mat, and yeah, obviously like they were telling me, it was just not working. And then once I kind of saw it all together, I was like, this is actually quite unattractive. It was just not pretty looking, and I didn't even want to wait for the plants to grow into filling it out because I just didn't want to look at it after that. So yeah, I got it out of my system. And yeah, then I kind of opened myself up to, okay, now that I've gotten this impermanence out of my system, I think I'm ready for something with commitment like spray foam. And then it just kind of blossomed from there. But actually, I forgot something. I want to backtrack a little bit because before the cocoa coir design, that was actually my second attempt. I actually just forgot. The very, very first attempt that I did with the baseball case, my very, very first attempt, I mixed sphagnum moss with worm castings. And I had the idea that I wanted to create kind of like a pasty type consistency of the sphagnum moss. And I wanted to like press it against the back and have aquarium mesh over the top to kind of keep the sphagnum in place. and then put the plants on top of the mesh and have them, kind of weave in and out of the mesh into the sphagnum moss behind it. That was actually my very, very first attempt. And, just saying it out loud, it's like, why did I ever think that was going to work? But yeah, I thought that would work. And actually, to be honest, the issues with the case at that time was not the fact that my design was not good. It was the moss was staying inconsistently moist. So the ends of the case were staying moist and the center of the case was bone dry. I would water that thing sometimes 3 times a day and it was always bone dry. Like no matter what I did, it was just not working for me. And the plants weren't really growing, and it was only like that for a few months. I mean, I don't really remember offhand, but that very, very, very first design with the sphagnum moss and the aquatic mesh, I didn't really have for that long. I would say maximum a few months. And then it was kind of one of those projects where I didn't know what to do, so I just left it alone. Until I was kind of like ready to revisit it. Like sometimes, you have a checklist in your head and you like check it off. And even though it's not 100% right, like you just feel good knowing that you checked it off, even though you have to revisit it. That's kind of what happened to me that very first time with the sphagnum moss. And then I, kind of was rejuvenated. Enough time had passed that I felt ready to get inspired. And at the time, the inspiration was Coco Coir. Just, I make myself laugh. And yeah, so then that whole Coco Coir thing happened, and I realized, wow, this is actually so unattractive. And at the time, so what I wanted to do was I wanted to have Coco Coir in the back, like matting along the back. Then I was searching for like twigs and like whatever online. And I came across this weird like wooden thing, and it said it was a chinchilla toy. And for those of you who don't know what a chinchilla is, it's kind of like, I think it's a rodent, but it's like the size of a rabbit, and it's so soft. And yeah, they're really sweet. I've seen them in like, pet stores and stuff, but I've never met a mean one. Actually, now that I think about it, I've never met a mean chinchilla. Maybe they're out there. I haven't met them. Not that I'm the chinchilla whisperer or anything. Like I've come in contact with like a million or whatever, but they're very sweet animals. And so anyway, I'm perusing Amazon as one does, and looking for like wooden sticks and like design stuff, because at the time I had purchased these big pumice rocks, because one of the people I was talking to who disapproved of the Coco Coir, rightfully so, was telling me if I wanted to use rocks in the case, I'd have to find something with light weight, because obviously it's acrylic and stones can be heavy, and then coupled with a plant on top, and then coupled with it being wet, like obviously rocks absorb water. And so they were telling me that I had to buy pumice. So I had my pumice in the cart, and I came across this little wooden chinchilla toy, and I thought, wow, that is so cool. So I ordered it, and I ordered it 12 inches, and I wanted 6 inches of it to be in the water and then 6 inches of it on the top of the water. And I would kind of put plants like in between the little holes, and then I would have like the rocks on top and stuff. I don't even know if you guys can picture this, but when I set it up, it was so ugly. It was like, it was one of those things where it's like, why did I even think this would look good? It was such a hot mess. I was so embarrassed putting that clip. Not truly embarrassed, but just like I was laughing at myself putting the clip in these videos, because it's not like I just did it once and it was like a 2-second clip and then it was gone. It's like, no, I use that same Coco Coir clip for like half the series. So it's like, I don't want people to see my my ugly design. But I was like, it's real though, so I added it. Like, I'm not going to pretend like I didn't do it. Of course I did it and whatever. It's not really that big of a deal, but I was just, joshing myself. And so I had this little chinchilla toy, and my design was I wanted the coco coir in the back. I wanted this 12-inch chinchilla wooden toy, which I later found out was a cactus bone, but I didn't know at the time. And I just thought it was a piece of wood that looked cool because it was like holy. And I thought, oh, if half of it is in the water, it's going to grow like mosses and algae and stuff. And I thought that would look cool. And then on the top, I would put plants. And then on top of the wooden piece, I'd have scattered pumice stones with like plants sitting on top of it and like trailing down. And I'm sure that sounds ugly to most of you, but in my head, I was like, this is it. This is it. And then I put it together and I was like, this is not it. So not it. And so then I scrapped all of that. And that's when I got into this final project, this series of, using the spray foam and the silicone glue and the tree fern fiber. And these were all products that I had never used before. And the first kind of like hump I had to get myself over was using the spray foam because I was so nervous that it was permanent. And at the time, I didn't have like a vision of how the case was going to look. So I didn't, it held me back from starting the project because I just couldn't see it in my head, and I knew the foam was permanent, and I was so nervous to make a mistake or to change my mind like, halfway through the project. And so I just didn't start for the longest time, and I had all of the materials, I want to say for like a month and a half. I would say minimally 30 days I had the supplies, and I just didn't start because I didn't have a vision. And then I had, a few pep talks from people that I just started and realized it's okay if I didn't have the final vision. Like, maybe it would come to me like as I started, and that's kind of is exactly what happened. And then I finally, got started with the project, and I waterproofed the case, and I did the spray foam and the tree fern fiber, and, cut the holes of the plants into the foam. And, one piece of advice I got from, I always want to call him Plantus, but that's his old name, from Plant Leaf, from Victor. He's based in France. He's has a nice plant account. He sells in the EU if anybody is in the EU. But anyway, he was, I lost my train of thought I lost my train of thought. His a piece of advice was to make more holes for the plants than I think I would want, because I can always leave them empty and then add, right? But I can't, or add the plants in. But he's like, if you only make 4 holes and then later down the line you realize, oh, these plants aren't really growing how I wanted them to grow, this looks bare, I want to add a plant there, I wouldn't be able to really because of the foam. So I thought that was really good advice. And so I just started making this exact pattern, and it just kind of all came together. And I made some of the holes like closer together, some of them more spread apart, some in the middle, some along the sides. And I liked that piece of advice because as it's growing in, like, who knows how long it's going to take these plants to, create that backdrop that I'm thinking of in my head. And so having those extra plants in there, I think, helps. So that was great advice, and I appreciate that. And what was the other thing I wanted to say? I had to stop recording because I was having such a big brain fart, so I had to go to my notes to see what I wanted to say. Because after the series, I think at the time I'm recording this, I believe the final result just came out today. So I'm working on posts that are coming up next week. I'll just give a few. So it's 3 things I learned from making a vertical terrarium, 3 things I would do again, 3 things I would change, 3 game changer products. So I was trying to remember like what I wanted to say. So I had to come back here and say it. But so with the spray foam, the problems that I'm having now, like present day, not in the series, but like present day issues, I sprayed the spray foam directly along the sides of the case. And the problem with that is the foam expands when it dries, and it pushed out the sides of the case, not a lot, to the point where if you look at it on the wall, you'll say, oh, that looks really janky. But, close up, you can say, that doesn't really look right. And now the problem that I'm having is because the sides bowed out, the magnets on the case and on the lid, that normally the lid just, magnetizes closed, the magnets don't align anymore. And this is causing huge problems for me right now. It looks so not good because I have to keep the lid on with, rubber bands, and it's very, I wouldn't say disheartening, but it's kind of annoying having done this project for 5 months and then finally being done with it, but like it's not really actually done because I have rubber bands holding my lid on right now. And so that's annoying. But yeah. Anyway, I realize this is kind of all over the place. And sorry about that, but I didn't want to forget what I wanted to say. And yeah, I would say the part that I liked the most during this process, and this is obviously personal to me, is the fact that I didn't rush the process, right? Like I said, I've had this case for over a year. My first design with the sphagnum moss was not good. And once I realized it was not good, I did not rush into something else, even though in hindsight it didn't work out with the cocoa coir mat. I'm happy that I didn't just rush to try to fix it. Like I let it marinate and then I revisited it when I wanted to revisit it, not that I had anxiety to, quote unquote, finish a project, right? Like I was happy that I had checked it off my list. I realized it wasn't right. And then I revisited it when I wanted to revisit it because I had to remind myself that this is a project and this is supposed to be fun and it's not supposed to stress me out. And then once I had gotten to that point, then I was, all excited to do my cocoa coir, which didn't work out, and that's okay. But again, after it didn't work out, I had bought the spray foam and like the silicone glue and all of that stuff, and I still waited like I said, minimally a month. I'm pretty sure it was a month and a half before I actually started the final, product that I have now. And I am very happy with myself that I took my time and I really enjoyed the process. Even though it didn't go exactly how I wanted it to go, I am happy that I did it my way and I didn't just rush to finish anything, And I do really enjoy it, and I like hearing the little water drips, and surprisingly, the plants all are doing really well. And it's just kind of interesting to me. This is a little, side note, but growing begonias is so personal to everyone in everyone's environment. Like every person has specific care tendencies. As an example, some people are overwaterers, some people are underwaterers, and everybody's household environment is different. Like here in Florida, the ambient humidity in just like my house with the AC on is about 50 to 70% inside my house with the not the humidifier, with the AC on, which takes out some of the humidity, right? But if you live in a hot environment, let's say Arizona, yeah, it's hot like it is in Florida, but there's very little ambient humidity. And that's why taking care of plants is so specific. What works for one person doesn't work for another person. That's why I always recommend people do, experiments in your own environment with your own care tendencies, etc. And it reminds me of when I first started, I would say, consistently posting about Begonia Sarawak experiments. So not the inception of my account, which was in May of 2021, but a little whiles after that, when I was consistently posting Begonia Sarawak experiments. I remember I got this comment that said, in the video, I remember I was recommending that Begonia Sarawak likes very moist, consistently moist environment, like bordering wet, like a bog. For me, that has always worked. And if I ever need to rehab a Sarawak, that's exactly what I do. And they almost always come back. So that is what works for me. And I remember I was making a video sharing my experience, as one does on any form of social media app, right? And I remember I got this comment saying, like, why am I recommending that to people? Like, that's very obvious that this plant doesn't like that, and I shouldn't recommend that to people. And but it wasn't with like the message behind it, like, oh, hey, that might work for you, but it might not work for everybody. It was very much so like a you're wrong, stop talking about this, like, kind of vibe. Like, you guys know what I'm talking about. And I remember I didn't like take it personal or anything. It's not like it ruined my day or anything, but I remember thinking, like, no, that's just not true. Like, that comment is just not true. It's not even like, oh, we have differing opinions. It's just not true. Like, everyone cares for their plants differently. I wasn't saying like this is the only way to care for your plant. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I wasn't saying like this is the only way, and if you don't do it this way, you're a bad plant parent and you're going to kill your plant, and it's no reason why your plants are dying. Like, it was nothing along the lines of that. It was, this is what works for me. Like, maybe you should try it if you're having like a problem with your plant. And yeah, so anyway, taking it back to the vertical terrarium with this, I have the water pump on the bottom and the hose going up the side, dripping down. So it's like a water, like a drippy waterfall type effect. And I put 5 or 6 different species in there from all different places. And all of them are basically living in a bog, and all of them are doing well. And that, I don't know, just sorry. I don't know if that's an entertaining story or not, but that's just what I thought of. And so if you have the plant that's coming to mind is my Papua New Guinea, my species Papua New Guinea, which is notoriously picky, finicky. Like, every person that's ever had it says the same thing, or at least the people that I've spoken to say the same exact thing about this plant. Like, it just has that kind of reputation. And I just put it in there because I thought, oh, this would look cool. And I don't think I've ever had a propagation that's happier. So if you have one, maybe try a bog environment. Yeah, I'm just joking, but not really, because it is working. But yeah, that was my whole process on making this vertical terrarium, which took me such a long time. Oh, I forgot if I mentioned, but this last design that I did, the final design, took me 5 months because I started it in July, and then I just finished it at December. I think I finished putting the plants in on December 18th. So, yeah, it took me a long time, but there was like a month-ish break that I didn't do anything. I don't think I really did anything the month of October, but it still counts because it was on my mind. But yeah, I mean, during that time, I went on 3 trips, kind of sort of back to back. So yeah, obviously there didn't really leave a whole lot of time for that. But yeah, I definitely recommend, if you have any sort of kind of desire to make something like this. In general, the materials are pretty cheap, and I would say just, start small if you don't have a lot of money but you want to do something fun. Like, I think the spray foam I used is like $7, and like the tree fern fiber, I bought a big bag, but you can just go outside and get, whatever for free. And yeah, everything was fairly cheap individually. And I think the silicone glue I bought was like $4 or $5. I mean, I did use quite a few tubes, but if you do a smaller size, I think it'll be fine. But yeah, like I said, the issue I'm having currently, like at this current moment, is the lid is not staying on. And also the bottom part where I did the silicone glue for the acrylic panel, that was a acrylic picture frame, by the way. Like, those acrylic picture frames that you see on like people's desk, or, like a banker's desk, where it's just like a clear piece of acrylic with like a picture in it, that, like, you know what I'm talking about. I found one of those. It was $8, and it was really thick, and I just liked it. And the silicone glue, I used the second one because we all know the first one did not hold up with the water. So the second silicone glue with the second acrylic panel, I was so sloppy with that glue, because I will say at that point I did let my anticipation slash nerves slash wanting the project to be over, they kind of came over me. And because I thought I was already done, and then there was that big leak, and I had to basically start that part all over again, I just was kind of rushing. And that, I wouldn't say I regret, because it's, causing me to problem solve right now, and the series goes on. But I wish I was a little bit neater with that glue, because I think maybe the magnets would have, I mean, they still would have been wonky, but I don't think it would have been as bad, because the silicone glue I used on the bottom, I used so much silicone glue because I did not want another leak, that it made it like really chunky, and the lid doesn't sit flush against it anymore. So that was another issue, in combination with like the bowing out from the foam. And I think it's those in combination that the lid is not staying on properly. But I guess you win some, you lose some. But the plants are doing so well. I'm very surprised that, I put pretty picky species in there, and they're all like living harmoniously together. Like, they all love being wet. That's what I found. That's a piece of advice. Try keeping it wetter. Maybe your plants will like it more wet. And yeah, so that was kind of what I wanted to talk about today. And I was thinking about making one and selling it. If anybody thinks that that's a good idea, or they don't think it's a good idea, let me know. I would appreciate feedback. Like, I'm genuinely interested in feedback, because I don't know if people would be interested in that. And obviously I've made one, and I would correct the mistakes in the second one. And also, if it's not good, like, I'm not just going to sell somebody that's not good. But I don't know if people would actually be interested in that. So I would buy the case, and I would do the background of the spray foam and the tree fern fiber. and I would basically buy all of the stuff, and you would select how many plants you wanted, and I would have, a list to choose from. They would all be the same price, and people could say, oh, I want 2 Sarawaks, 2 Lyconoras, and 1 species orange, like as an example, and then I would just ship them everything and they just kind of assemble it. I don't know if anybody would be interested in that, but I kind of had it in my head as an idea, and I don't know, I'm just curious to get people's opinions on that. So if you have an opinion one way or the other, let me know. If you don't have an opinion, let me know too, because that might be helpful. If like everybody doesn't really care about it, then I kind of got my answer. But yeah, I'm curious if anybody has made anything like this, like the what did we say the word was? Podarium, right? Plodarium. If anybody has made one before, if they have, I don't know, any advice for me, even though I'm done, I'd still love more info, because I'm sure it won't be my last one. I'd appreciate it. And if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. This has been, I think, the most rambly of a podcast I've done, because I don't have a outline in front of me. Usually, even though I talk more freely and, it's just kind of like us hanging out, I do have like a brief outline to kind of keep me on track, or, if I like go off on a tangent story, I have like a focal point to come back to. I did not do that here, so sorry if it was jumpy and all over the place, but I mean, I can do better next time. But yeah, I was actually in the middle, like I said before, I was in the middle of doing these like 3 things I learned, 3 things I would do again, like those kind of posts, and I was in the middle of it, and I just thought I should record a podcast on this. So I like stopped what I was doing like right in the middle, and I am recording this. So yeah, sorry about the no outline. I'll do better next time, or if you guys don't care, you can let me know too. But thank you for listening. If you would like to see all of my posts on the vertical terrarium, you can go to Instagram at BegoniaSarawak. And Instagram got rid of the guides, so none of my guides are there. Otherwise, that would be so much easier to find. But they're the most recent posts. And if not, you can just scroll down. They're like all clustered together. So I'm sure as you're scrolling, like you'll see at least one, and they go in order from there. But yeah, I hope everybody has a good day or night, and thank you for listening. I'll see you in my next episode. Bye.